Welcome to Cascadia Daily News. Today we're here with Ray Pelletti, Republican candidate for Washington State House of Representatives, District 42, Position 1. Welcome.
Thank you.
With me are Ron Judd, CDN's executive editor, Cynthia Pope, our publisher, and reporter Charlotte Alden, who's covering this race. Ron and Cynthia are voting members of the CDN editorial board. And as seems obvious, we are recording this in both audio and video. Okay, so you've responded to the Citizens Agenda questions, but as I believe I told you earlier, I've never met a candidate who thought 150 words was enough to respond to those. So I'm going to go through some of the questions now, and you'll have a chance to talk some more about that. First question was, what will you do about our housing crisis? Not just the lack of stock, but lack of average and middle class affordability and predatory investors and landlords.
Okay, well, first of all, thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Our housing affordability issue is basically, you got to look at several factors. We'll do the housing affordability. Some of it's outside the market, such as interest rates, which are a federal issue, pretty much how they get set. Housing, the number one problem with housing affordability is the government. The permit processing takes way too long. The fees involved with getting a house permitted in Bellingham is extremely high. The last statistic I saw between the permitting fees, the TIF fees, the review fees and all that, by the time you got up before you even drove a nail in the board was about $110,000. So there's a lot of expense up front to the builder developer that they have to absorb whether they build the house or not. And that makes it difficult for a lot of people to get into the development and building process. Secondly, the new overlay from the state where it changed all single-family residential zoning, Bellingham is impacted, to be a multifamily zoning now. What that means is a single-family residential lot in Bellingham is no longer a single-family residential lot. It is a multifamily lot, and it can go up to 6 units per lot. The setbacks don't apply anymore. So the problem is that you can get 4 units on a lot because you can do 4 houses, 4 basic living units. You can do a fourplex, but you can also add 2 ADUs to that lot. So you end up with 6 living units on a lot. The other problem with the state overlay is that it eliminated having to take parking off the street and then just said, we're just going to put it back on the street. Well, we already have a mess in Bellingham. If you've been up in the area over by the college, the university, when I go up there to do work, I have to get a permit from somebody to park on the street to do work at their house. So anyway, that's one. Bring me up to date on the next part of that, would you?
Lack of average and middle class affordability and predatory investors and landlords.
The lack of affordability is a compound issue of interest rates, lack of inventory. There's 2 elements that go into a house basically. One is labor and one is material. The problem is the labor prices have gone up because we've done a couple things which probably are fine. We raised the minimum wage thing, but most people in the trades industry make more than minimum wage anyway. And so that's one. Materials, we don't realize it, but when there's a hurricane in Florida, our lumber prices go up. Because where are all the lumber companies going to send the materials to? They're going to send them to Florida because that's where they're going to pay more for it. So to be competitive, we take it here. Predatory lending is pretty much a thing of the past. We used to call hard money lenders or the people that would make loans where the loan fees were 12% and the interest rates were 12%. And compare that against the market, which was a 3% interest rate and a 2% loan fee. So the cost of predatory lending is pretty much over at this point. If there's any out there, I haven't seen them. I'm involved in the real estate industry, so I can tell you I just don't see the predatory lending. That cover that?
Okay. Next question from the Citizens Agenda was, what will you do to bring fair and equitable funding to all public school districts in Washington? Is the state's adjustment factor working?
Okay, fair and equitable funding, we have to go back a few years. We had a McCleary decision which said we will fund schools at 100%. So what do we create? We created the casinos, we created the gambling, we created all that. And what was the premise or the promise is the monies from those would go to our school systems. They didn't get there. So the problem is, do we have the money? We have the money. The problem is, where did it go? And when it gets sidetracked to other projects and other areas, at the end of the year, we end up being short of money. And nobody seems to be able to figure out where it went. So the first thing is, you need to be specific as to where you're going to spend the money when you say you're going to spend the money on X. That's where the money has to go. If you need money for Z, go find a funding source for it. Don't take it out of our schools. I'm not familiar enough with the other provision of balancing the schools because I'm not involved in it. It's not my level. So I'd look into that. But pretty much, we have a couple issues. We have money into the system because of COVID, and each school district got to decide where they put the money. Some of it went to books, computers, stuff like that. Some of it went to bringing personnel on. Well, when the money ran out, the people that spent the money on books and computers and all that, they were just done. The people that hired people to come in and work in the school system, well, they became the ones that got laid off. And yes, the money wasn't there, but when you take a single mom who has 2 kids that's working in the school district and you lay her off, that's a big impact. We should have got a little ahead of that one.
Okay. Next citizens' agenda question was, do you think the current state infrastructure, utilities, transportation, parks, et cetera, is up to the standards that taxpayers expect? And if not, what specific things would you do to change that?
So the state's infrastructure is definitely in a disrepair. We spend tons of money on streets that money never gets there. We spend transportation, and we're not in the Seattle area, but we have a railroad system going in that's in the high billions of dollars and not working out so well. If you take and drive through Bellingham and you wear a pair of white slacks and you take a cup of hot chocolate that's about 3/4 full, tell me what your slacks look like when you get to the other side of town. It's a disaster. I met with one of the unions who does the street repairs, and their main complaint was, we get it approved, they fund it, and they never get the money. It gets diverted to other sources. So what their concern was is, why aren't they getting the money they were told to fix the roads? We have local streets, which we tend to drive on most of the time. We have the freeways, we have the highways. And to answer your question, I'm pretty sure if we did a general question to the public, they would say, no, our infrastructure is not there. We need to make it better. And why isn't it better?
So how do we do that? How do we make it better?
Accountability. When we say, okay, we're going to spend $800 million on a road system, that $800 million has got to go to that road system and fix it. From last I remember, and I can be wrong on the numbers, we're $500 million short of fixing all the roads in the state of Washington, but we've been putting the money aside for it for years, and it still hasn't happened. So until we have somebody that says, hey, this is what we're going to allocate the money for, we've approved the money, and this is where it goes, and you're in charge of it, and you make sure that's where it goes, and if you can't do that, we'll get somebody else to do that.
Why isn't that money getting to the right place?
It seems to get diverted somehow in the system. When they allocate it, they say we're going to spend $500 million for whatever system or road or whatever. And as it gets down into the funding process, it ends up being diverted because people have a hand in the pie and say, we need more of the money going here than there. Well, but didn't you approve it for here? Yes, but we need more money going here and there. It sort of has to be a locked vault. This is the money, this is where it goes. One of the things I probably never get through, but when we put a bill on the table and it says, fund the roads, that's the only thing in the bill. We can either be yay for it or nay for it. If we're yay for it, how much money are we going to put there? Put it in that vault, that's where we spend it, and the person we put in charge of it is accountable to make sure that's where the money goes. And people don't want to do that. So just be clear. I don't have an ego in this job. I'm looking for outcome and to get the job done. If I go 3 terms, that'll be it. I'm done. Probably can tell why. And that's it. But we need to be accountable for the money we spend. And when I sit in front of you and I say we're going to spend the money on this, I can't change my mind later because I'm not sitting in front of you.
Okay. I'll have to remember the white slacks test. Yeah. That was very effective.
That's why I don't wear white slacks.
The next Citizens Agenda question was, what is your stance on State Initiative 2117, which would repeal Washington's Climate Commitment Act?
First of all, we have to be good stewards of our planet, good stewards of our environment, and good stewards of how we do things. And I think over the years, we got away from that because a lot of things were profit-driven instead of reality-driven, which you need to fix. The climate initiative, if they said we're going to fix the climate in Washington state, then I would think we might have a dog in the fight. But that money is diverse everywhere else but Washington state. So if you want to have climate change in the state, tell us what you want to do, how much it's going to cost, and where we're going to spend the money. And don't take our money and go to other parts of the world, because if you look at the statistics, the United States is one of the least polluters of the world when you compare it to China and other places around the world. We can do better. We have to look at it and go after that dog.
Okay, and the final Citizens Agenda question, and one that, as long as we've been doing the Citizens Agenda process, questions about PeaceHealth have dominated.
I thought that was hilarious.
So what can you do to ensure PeaceHealth and other hospital groups in the state provide price transparency and screen patients for financial assistance eligibility?
Well, I thought it was interesting. They singled out one entity. We got Children's Hospital in Seattle. We got Children's Hospital in Tacoma. None of them were called out, which I'm not saying there's a problem.
Only one in the 42nd district, though.
Oh, got it. I got it. Well, since I go there frequently, they seem to be pretty good to me. So first of all, they're a business. And we want to make sure they can stay in business so they can do 2 things for us. A, they need to be here. B, we want to be able to say, I don't need to go to Seattle for this treatment because we have the same best treatment here that we can get. Since we have a family member currently going through cancer treatment for radiation, the conversation was, do they go to Seattle or do they stay here? We stayed here. We assumed and what checking we could do. The services here are as equal or as comparable to what you do in Seattle. So PeaceHealth, on the other hand, I can't tell you that they're not transparent. It's their business. And how do we monitor them as a government agency to overlook a private agency? Maybe not, maybe yes. What I think we need to do, though, is, first of all, we want every family, every child to have adequate health coverage. I don't care how you get it. But I think we need to step back and say, look, let's quit telling the hospital how they have to perform. Let's set up an agency in between. Everybody goes there, you get pre-screened, you get your card, and you go to the hospital just like everybody else does with an insurance card, and you get your treatment. There's no discussion. If there's assistance needed, it was already figured out. If you need surgery, it's already figured out how it's going to be paid for, whether the people have insurance or we're going to pay for it for them or whatever. One of the hardships for me to watch is when we have an 8-year-old that's sick and can't get treatment. They need to get in and get treatment. That's just sort of simple, okay? So I think we can do better. I think we need to have sort of like a card where they can go get treatment and walk in and say, here, I've already been pre-screened. Hospital doesn't have to deal with it. Then maybe that'll answer your other question. How do we transparency the costs? Well, hospital bills this card, they know exactly what was billed and how it would be paid out.
Okay. That's the citizens' agenda questions. We have lots of other questions to ask.
Good.
Ron, do you have a question to ask?
I do. I actually would like to quickly follow up on that one. I think that what you say about the 8-year-old needing treatment, I think everybody I hear from on this side of the argument would agree with that, right? We need some sort of a reliable system. Mm-hmm. Your solution almost sounds a little bit like single-payer healthcare, which I'm not sure is what you intended. No. Same result, different way. So tell me how that vision that you have, and I know it's a complicated subject, differs from that other vision of the government stepping in to pick up the cost of that 8-year-old who doesn't have health care.
I think, and you're right, sometimes there's an overlap between single pay and insurance pay and all that. I think if we're going to talk about PeaceHealth for our district, I think we can set up a separate intermediary, if you wish, and say, okay, instead of you going to the hospital and sitting in the emergency room, and I want to cover that, the emergency room is not the family care center. That's for emergencies. We've been there and there's 15 people in there that are coming because their child has a sniffle. Well, there should be an offset to that. So anyway, we'll back up. They need to be able to go get pre-screened, pre-approved, however they're going to do it, and we control it at a local level. I don't need the state involved in it. This is a local process where we have people that work here, live here, are professionals that say, here's how we're going to set it up, here's how it's going to work, and here's how we're going to fund it. Now, if the state has to step in and fund part of that, that's fine, but we'll have a conversation on that.
So who would administer that program then at the local level? Is that a county responsibility or is it a state responsibility localized to Whatcom County, do you think?
I'm thinking neither.
Okay.
I think we need to create a group of people. They can be healthcare professionals, insurance professionals, whatever. We have hospice. They're not a government agency, but they do a heck of a job. So I think we can set up a group that says, okay, this is what we'll do. They'll be paid, so it's not a burden on them. And let's set it up and structure it so that our people in our districts here can get the treatment they need. And if they need more treatment, then they can be directed to the right people. The problem right now is if you go to the hospital and they kick you out because you need to go see this person, well, we already wasted 2 or 3 weeks. So let's do it right. And maybe we can be the model for the rest of the state to set it up that way.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, one question that's related to the housing question is homelessness.
Yes.
General question, what are your plans for addressing the homeless problem? And I guess more specifically, a fifth of the homeless population is chronically homeless because of mental health or addiction issues, and 80% of the resources go to that group. So what should we do about the homeless situation?
So I have a little different take on it. First of all, you have to, my opinion is, you have to understand we have 2 types of properties in our country, private property and public property. The streets are for traveling, the sidewalks are for walking, and the businesses have an expectation of people being able to get to and from their business. So you're absolutely right. I have 5 levels of homeless affordability, okay? If you're Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos, you buy whatever you want, wherever you want, however they want to afford it. Then you step down to the average person. Working people want to buy up or maybe downsize, depending on what it is, and it's based on their ability to pay or purchase or whatever. Then you have the middle section, I call it, and that's where, hey, you know, you need a little extra money towards the down payment. You need a little reduction in your interest rate. You need this, and then you're fine. You can get into an average home in the marketplace. Then the 4th level are the people that are on the streets, and you're right, 2/3 of them, if you want, they don't need to be there. A lot of them are there because they just don't want to do anything different. Well, they got to go away. And there are streets, and they can be moved. That 1/5 is something we've addressed to fail. And the reason I say that is if you're on the street and you're living on the street and you're sleeping in your urine and you're drug overdosed 2/3 of the time, we're not being compassionate. We're being negligent. They need to be said, look, here's a simple way. If you can feed yourself appropriately, good. If you can find housing for yourself affordably, good. If you can get medical for yourself affordably, good. If you can take care of yourself affordably, good. And if you can't, we will, but here's where you will go. You don't get the option to stay on the street. We give you an example. King County, over a 10-year period, spent $1 billion on the homeless. That's not our county. I don't know. I've tried to get numbers out of this county. I can't find them. That's $100 million a year they put towards homeless people. You know what they got? More people living on the street, more drug addicts, more overdose deaths. Fentanyl is a big issue. We have 100,000 people a year die of fentanyl overdose. The problem in Seattle, which is a different market, I'm sure I've seen it, I've seen a couple things here, is when a 4-year-old goes to the hospital because of an overdose on fentanyl, we're being negligent. Those kids need to rely on people that can make the right decision and make sure they're in a good, healthy spot.
Charlotte, you've been covering this race. You have some questions.
Yeah, following up on the last question, how would that proposal to make people accept help, how would that work under the state's existing commitment laws? Or would you propose a change to those laws?
I'd have to take a look at the commitment laws because I can't tell you. What I would do is say this: if you can't take care of yourself, we're going to help you. About 8-10 years ago, there was a proposal in the state legislature to set up a campus where you had the hospital, where you had the treatment center, where you had housing, and you also had tech school. Help transition these people back into the marketplace. And the other thing is, we have money to do that. When you take all the cities and you add up all the monies they've got piled together, we got a ton of money. We're just pilling it out here and there in little amounts. We're just wasting it. So yes, we'd change the law, and here's what it would have to be. You need to be able to take care of yourself. You can't be a burden on the street. We want to help you. And from what I've understood, if somebody says, I'm a drug addict and I don't want your help, we walk away and leave them there. That's not helping anybody. We still have the same problem on the street. The same people are ill. We need to build campuses and put people where they need to go. And I understand in Burien, they're already doing that. The state's building a hospital, building a treatment facility, building a place to take care of them. So the state's either caught on or going in that direction. I don't know if anybody's been to Eastern Washington lately. We got a ton of open land over there. We can do a 200-acre campus and put all the facilities and help people and say, you're going to be here for 6 months to a year, and here's the process. And when you're done, you can go wherever you want because you can get a job and you will be contributing back into society. Okay?
Yeah, I had another follow-up on the Climate Commitment Act question. I didn't quite hear an answer to that question, whether you're for or against that initiative. And I wanted to ask, the funding for that tax is, creating a grant program where institutions like Bellingham Public Schools can apply for funding. And just this year, Bellingham Public Schools received money for solar panels. So you were talking about money going internationally, and the money from that act is going to Washington institutions. So what is your perspective on that initiative, and does that information change your perspective?
Yeah, I didn't know that, so thank you. Again, I've not worked with it, so I'm not real familiar. If it's a climate change program, why are we using the money out of that to treat the schools? We should have a funding program for the schools. Let's upgrade them. Linden just got their school bond voted down for the third time, and all they want to do is fix up their schools. So why don't we take money from there and put it into there instead of doing the state going back and giving us our money back, essentially. And I'm all for solar panels. I asked the Dr. Granger out at the Blaine High School, because they're redoing it. And I said, your new building's going to have solar panels? And he says, well, we're working on it. And I think that's where they're going to go with it. I think that's a great idea. I'm not sure I got all your answer, but I tried.
Previously, you told me that you want to make transgender issues more of a part of your campaign. Can you elaborate that and what your specific policy proposals are in relation to transgender issues?
First of all, I don't care if you're gay, I don't care if you're lesbian, and I really don't care if you're trans. Just don't make me or people that don't want to be involved in it part of that. One of the issues I have, and I think I mentioned it to you, the gays and the trans people never set boundaries for where their activities were going to be. Boundaries are, when we raise our kids, we say, you don't go over there because this is a problem, or this is what you do and how you do it. I didn't know we had to put biological male on the men's room. I didn't know we had to put biological female on the girls' room. If you're a biological male, stay out of the women's spaces. That's their bathrooms, their locker rooms, their shower rooms, and their sports. Why would I help? My kids are grown, but I have grandkids. I don't want my grandkids, my 6-year-old granddaughter going into a bathroom and then having to deal with a guy standing in there doing whatever. She shouldn't have to deal with that. No reason anybody else's kids should have to deal with that. Why would you support your kids for 12 to 14 years, getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, going to the pool, practicing in the pool, working out, doing your studies, because in order to be on the swim team, you got to have your grades up so you don't get the slack on that, only to get into high school and college and find out that you're going to compete against a male. Well, that's not right. If the guys want to swim, swim in the guys' league. If the girls want to swim in their league, swim in there, but they're separate. Don't cross over. So I think most of what I'm referring to is stay in your lane. If you're a guy, stay there. If you're a gal, be in there. And I think the boundaries were never set. I don't want to see a guy, if you have a pride parade, knock yourself out. But I don't want to see a guy in a jockstrap riding down the street on his bicycle. I mean, we used to call that lewd and obscene. Now we call it, oh, go. So I hope that helps. Just so you know, I have several friends that are gay. I have several friends that are trans, and we do fine. Okay?
So just quick follow-up. So in high school sports, then you're saying that transgender athletes should not be allowed to compete?
Let me be clear. They should be barred from competing in women's sports, period. They have no reason to be in women's sports. They are not a woman. They are not a girl. They are biologically male. And I don't care how you want to knock the testosterone test down to 0. Their muscle masses are different. Their bone densities are different. They are different people. And the Olympics and the boxing prove that. The gal who was fighting for the gold medal in the Olympics had to fight against a transgender. And she said, I've never been hit harder in my life. Guys hit hard. If you want to put a transgender in the ring with Mike Tyson, I'll pay to go watch. Mike Tyson is a pretty tough guy.
But that person was judged by among the top people in the international field of competitive sports to be biologically gendered in that gender, like you said. So how does somebody at the local level of Mount Baker High School make that kind of determination for that? There's a lot of fluidity in amounts of testosterone in athletes, and the international sports community has struggled with this for many decades, continues to. They're trying to be fair in the way that they've set it up, and everybody sees that there are gaps in that process. It's very complicated. So I can sort of sympathize with local school officials who are placed with that same sort of responsibility. So who sets that boundary? Who do you think is responsible for that, and on what standard?
Good question, thank you. If you're born a biological male, it's I've listened to some pretty well-educated people, and they say, when you boil it down, they're going to tell you whether that's a female or a male and they can do that. If you're born a biological male, then you can't, one of the things I think we changed in our state is you can change your birth certificate. No, you were, it wasn't a choice. When you were in the womb, they didn't give you a choice which way you wanted to be born. You were born what you were. If you're a biological male by is it XY chromosomes or XX, you're a biological male. You shouldn't be able to, change your birth certificate because your parents want to, because the kid didn't change their birth certificate. The parents did. If you're a biological female, you should be able to participate as a female all your life. Now, I'll have to talk with you about the details on how you sort that out. But I think we got too complicated in the issue and tried to overcomplicate the issue.
Well, I think that some of those athletes who I've talked to would say that simplification was the problem for them, right?
Yeah.
They feel differently and feel rejected for, they have a stake in this too. So I have a hard time figuring out how those rigid standards that you're asking to be applied. And I think that there's kind of universal agreement there needs to be some way to make this work better. But who on the local level is qualified to make that decision?
Good point. I have to talk with you more about it. It's not a simple answer. I've got 5 minutes here. It's going to be as simple as answer I can give you. But there are people that probably need to be addressed to see where they fall in that spectrum. But a 15-year-old boy who's been a male for 15 years is not a girl, just because he says so. Now, what you think you are and what you feel you are and all that are all feelings. And that's a different issue.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
let's just stick with body issues here for just a minute.
Talk about my weight.
Since the Supreme Court struck down Roe v. Wade, abortion has been continued to be a major issue. Would you support or oppose legislation that would further restrict the right to abortion in Washington?
Let me give you my take on it, and then I'll answer your question. First of all, abortion's a medical procedure. There should be a reason for it. It's not for me to tell a lady, if you're going to die, that you can't have an abortion. That's not it. It's also not for me, and I grieve for the pain and the trauma of somebody who's been raped, incest, or spousal rape. First of all, that's emotional, and I don't know how they deal with it. But there has to be, I would think, a period of time which is short. I said 12 weeks, some people say 26 weeks. If those are your circumstances and you decide not to carry that child, then make the decision as soon as you can and abort it. If you're getting down to late-term delivery and your life depends on you can't give birth to that baby and it's been determined by your doctor, well, then maybe an abortion is the right thing to do. Late-term abortion where the baby's 9 months old, it's no longer a baby, it's a human being. It's already there. If you've ever watched even a graphic thing of an abortion, they're pretty gruesome. And you should do that. So, and let's talk about infanticide. When that baby is born and it's on the table and it's alive, guess what? It's a U.S. citizen. Failure by the doctor or any medical person to take care of that baby once it's on the table and it's alive, that's a felony. But yet we're saying, oh, well, let the mom decide if it wants to live. No, the baby is protected under the U.S. Constitution. So Roe versus Wade basically said, put it back to the states. Let the states decide what is appropriate. Washington State has, I've read several of the provisions, has said they're going to allow abortions here. I think there is a time limit from when it's conceived until it can be aborted. what the state did is said, you know what, people coming from Idaho where it's banned can come here and we're not going to prosecute the people for doing that. Well, we just made the judgment for Idaho that says, we're not going to listen to your rules, we're going to just abide by ours, send your people over here. That's a tough one. I don't know anybody in their right mind has a simple answer. But if your life's at risk, you have a right to make a choice.
Even if you're coming from Idaho into Washington.
If that has to be your choice, then make it be your choice. Yeah. I wouldn't tell people that, don't come here cause. If you're going to die, you ever call 911 when somebody has a heart attack? What do you expect them to do? Help the person that's in trouble. Anyway.
Quick follow-up to that, to your answer. I appreciate your candor.
Yeah.
Do you think that those kind of what you called very late-term abortions are a problem in Washington State, that happens frequently?
I don't believe they happen frequently here, but the annual cry is pro-choice, but they leave it like from day one to the 9th, 2 minutes before the delivery. No, I'm not saying we do that. I don't think Washington State has that concept. I think Washington State is sort of more common sense. And so I'd have to look and see what the parameters were. I'm not making a medical decision for somebody. My whole medical training is 2 weeks of Red Cross training. I don't have 8 years of school. I need to rely on those people to say this is the best route to go, and okay, I may not be happy about it, but it's not my call.
Cynthia? Your turn.
Yes. Have you ever run for public office before, held public office?
I have done neither. I've never run for public office, never held public office. I don't think I ever ran, no.
So what prompted you to run this time?
I'll give you the short answer, then I'll give you the long answer. What prompted me to run is either put up or shut up. So I'm here. I watched things over the years and I say, that's not right. You shouldn't, whatever the topic was. And I'd be livid about it and I wouldn't do anything about it other than have my voice opinion. So I finally said, look, there's several things. I want my grandkids to be able to grow up and be healthy, be safe, be able to walk through town, not have a problem, be able to go to the schools they want to go to, and not fear anything. If they want to be in sports, be in sports. I saw that as an issue, number one. Trans people are really not my issue. It's what they do. You know, if you want to be trans, that's your choice. I also looked at, what do you mean defund the police? And when you have large organizations, regardless of the type of organization, there's going to be a few people in there that shouldn't be there, and they shouldn't be on the streets. Our police department and our fire department, they work hard. When they go on a domestic call for the police department, number one place where officers are injured is on a domestic call. And you can't defund them and not pay people to be there. Seattle can't even hire new people. Even with the large bonuses, they can't get them to come in. Our police force in Bellingham is way down. We're having trouble getting police to come in here. They're going to the other districts. They don't want to be involved in Bellingham. So we need to fund the police to the amount they need to have to do a proper job. It's a tough job. So policing, abortion, wasn't a big deal. I mean, we got to deal with it. Keeping our kids safe in schools. One of the hard problems that I've found is when you look at the bills that were passed, protect our children, reproductive rights. Do you know what reproductive rights allow for? Is take the breasts off at age 10. Why in the world are we mutilating our fully healthy young kids because somebody decided or they decided that they should be, well, it's not a hysterectomy, a mastectomy. at 10 years old. That's wrong. Where did we come up with the right that says the state shall take your child out of school and put you in a house and not tell your parents where you're at? You know what I'd have done when my kids weren't home at 5:30? We were on the phone finding out where they were at. And if you tell me you know where they're at and you're not going to tell me, oh boy, I think we got a problem. So we need to keep the parents involved with the children in school, with their activities, and not disengage the family from the children. A parent doesn't necessarily have to agree, and my parents never did, on what I wanted to do or how to do it. But I can tell you that the DEI counselor at school is not the person I want telling my kid they can go have a hysterectomy or a mastectomy. Do you know what bottom surgery is?
No idea.
Most people don't. Bottom surgery is castration of a boy. It castrates them, slits their crotch to make for a vagina, transitions them over to be a female. You can't get there from here. And all without the parents being involved. And that's in the bills that were passed. And I just said, we got to fix that.
What bills specifically were that was that passed?
5599.
In Washington State?
Yep, last year.
Do you know of instances where those kind of procedures have actually happened with parents not being notified?
Personally, no. Unfortunately, hearsay is a bad thing, but I understand there are stories of people's kids being taken out and put in there. So let me back it in the other way for you. If it's not an issue, why do we have to make a bill for it? I wrote to my representative and I said, in this bill, what's the minimum age for a child to have this procedure done? Oh, it's not for kids, it's for adults only. I said, okay. If an adult wants to go have a mastectomy, if an adult wants to go have a sex change, they don't need a law. If they're truly an adult, if they're 25 years old and older, because somebody on the left said until you're 24 and a half, your brain's not fully matured. So I don't understand why we have a bill that says there's no minimum age to any of this, and they can take your child out of the school or put them in a house. And then what they said, and it's in the bill, go look it up.
Has this bill passed?
Yes, it passed last year. And it states this, and I'm going to paraphrase it. It says, if the child is decided and the counselor that it would be harmful for the child to go home, then they will put it in a home for 3 days, 72 hours. Well, then they modified that and said, well, during that 72 hours, there's another state agency that'll get involved. And if they determine that it would be bad for that child to go home after 72 hours, they'll put it in a safe house indefinitely, not notify the parents. I don't know if you study Russian history or Chinese history. They've already done all that. It didn't work out so well because parents said enough, and that's where we need to be.
Do you think there is a circumstance where a child might be pulled out of school and put in a safe house that's warranted for protection of that child for various reasons?
I used to volunteer at, is there a potential reason for that? I used to volunteer at a youth correctional facility. So the answer is absolutely yes. Unfortunately, not all parents are reasonable. Not all people should be parents, okay? But that process, I think we already have in place, is Child Protective Services need to get involved. If it's that bad, then what do? We have the judge look at it. Mm-hmm. And the judge makes a determination, not a high school counselor, not a DEI counselor. So I wish we were in a perfect world. We're not. Can we make it a perfect world? Probably not. But I think we can do better.
Does your school district have a specifically identified DEI counselor?
I don't know if Blaine does. I thought they did. And I'll stand corrected on that if that's the case.
Okay. The presidential candidate of your party
Yep.
has questioned the integrity of elections, particularly the one in 2020.
Yep.
So my question to you is, do you have confidence in the integrity of elections in Washington?
I happened to be at a meeting where our county election person, and she spoke. And I listened to her procedure. I happen to know some of her staff. And I want to say this. I think we should be fairly well situated in our county that that's correct, that I don't think we'll have election issues. So there's still people that do. Let them go battle it out, knock themselves out. So here's the way I like to do it. Tell me what you're going to do. I'll watch you do it. I'll see the outcome. And if the outcome's what you said, we're good. If you tell me what you're going to do, and I watch you do it, and the outcome's not what you said, then we'll have a conversation. But at this point, I think we're good.
So just to follow up briefly on that, you would accept the results of an election as certified by the Whatcom County Auditor and the Washington Secretary of State,
Yes.
whatever the outcome.
Yeah. I have to, I may not like it. That's the way it should be. But to say, oh, it was, and I'll qualify that. I got to trust the people that I represent to do the right job. Okay? The 2020 election was all 50 states. Believe it or not, there were people charged, prosecuted for election fraud. Might have been 2 of them. But the answer to the question, none ever happened, is incorrect. None never happened. Mostly was probably more correct.
Sure.
And I just look at the processes. If we don't trust the people, there's 2 sides to that. If I can't trust you as the auditor to do your job and to do it right, and just be what it is, that's fine. And you need to trust me to do my job, so I do it right. And this is what I'll tell you I'll do, and this is how I'll go about it. And if you don't like it, talk to me. I'll listen. I've listened to Charlotte. She gave me some input and went, okay, I'll listen. And I did it. So I don't know everything. I'm probably going to, when I say this, I'm not putting myself down. I know the least amount about a lot of subjects. If you know more than I, let's sit down and have a cup of coffee, whatever you want to have. I want to talk to you. If we can't agree, let's talk about it. If we can't agree when we're done, at least I maybe learned something. The worst thing we can have is a dictator at any level.
Charlotte, other questions?
Yeah, I want to ask you about your position on Initiative 2109 on repealing the capital gains tax.
The capital gains, I can talk on that one now. You gave me a title, 2109 capital gains. The state of Washington has no business in the capital gains business. When you invest in your property, believe it or not, you expect to make a profit. That's the whole reason you do it. Now, some profits are based on profits of income minus expenses, and you have some profit left over. Appreciation is what capital gains is based on. If you buy a property for $300,000 and you sell it for $600,000, it went up in value, but so did everything else, because it's like a boat in the water. When the tide goes up, all boats rise. When the tide goes down, all boats sink. So I think the state of Washington made a bad decision. They call it a capital gains. They call it a tax? Yeah, it's a tax. They have no business taxing gains and profits. Then they flipped it over to another term. I forget what it was. So first of all, just so you understand, the IRS already gets you on capital gains. It's not a freebie. You have to pay money to the feds, and that's where that money goes. The state of Washington was just looking for a source to say, okay, we notice house prices going up. And it doesn't apply to house prices, by the way. But we know business prices went up. Your buildings went up in value. So there's a place to collect more money. Well, believe it or not, I don't believe that the state did anything to earn it. because, and here's my joke, if you wish, the state didn't have a bake sale. They get their money from you and me. They get their money from when we buy stuff. And so I'm just not on board with the capital gains issue. I would be I would be an opponent of that.
A follow-up on that. Only about 55 people in Whatcom County were taxed on that last year, so it affects a small amount of people. And the money from that provided $5.4 million in school construction project funds to Whatcom County. And I know you talked about wanting to fund school construction earlier. So does that change your perspective knowing where this money is going to school construction and to childcare?
Well, there's two questions, or maybe three in there. They're taking additional money and putting it into school construction. We've already got budgets for that. We already have monies for those. We just need to maybe fund them better. Okay, I don't know. What I think, and know very little about, fair enough, is when you tell me it's for children, don't use that as a label to pull on the heartstring. Tell me what the money's for, where it's going to go, and why it's there. But when you say, oh, you're anti-kid, no, I'm not anti-kid. I got 11 grandkids, okay? Only when they're coming to my house is my, no. We have a good time. So we have several bills and initiatives that say these are for the kids. Well, when you look at it, not all of it goes there when you get down into the details. So part of what I said earlier, if I got a bill and it says this is for cleaning all the sidewalks in Bellingham, that's what it's about. Here's how much it costs. This is what we're going to do. In schools, we have bonds, we have taxes, we have lots of things to go into it. And how that flows, I can't tell you. And I have friends of mine that are on school boards, so I'll find out. Okay.
Sorry, one more question.
No, go ahead.
Speaking of bonds, obviously you mentioned that Linden's bond did not go through. And there have been some talk from the state superintendent and from OSPI that they're looking to change it from having to get a supermajority for those to pass to just a simple majority.
Simple majority.
Is that something that you would support?
I'm going to have to look at, I've had that question and answer already with some couple people. Guy on the school board says 50-50. Guy down the street says, no, supermajority. So why was the supermajority put in on those particular issues? I don't know. I'll have to find out. And we need to support our schools, which was interesting because that's the second or third time Linden's got shut down. The biggest, I think so, yeah. The mistake they made is they went into primary, going to general, when all the people are voting. You're not going to get enough people in the primary to step up and say, I want to pay more taxes. But in the general, maybe they'll be a little more aware. My wife is a double, you get an Apple Award for doing things in the PTA. She's got 2 of them. I've done more school dances than you can count. I'm the chaperone. Didn't do such a good job. Anyway, that's a joke. I think some of these things, I'd want to talk to people that know more about them. Again, you want to talk about real estate? I'm your guy. And bonds, but I think the biggest thing that Linden screwed up on is they went in the primary.
Well, we've had a lot of questions on really meaty issues here and issues that are important to the 42nd District. But as I'm sure you're aware, that people don't always vote on the basis of stands on issues. They want to know something about the candidate, the person. So, we all have people who've inspired us. Who are your heroes and heroines?
George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Covey. Ever read any books by Stephen Covey? I learned a lot from them. And I read their books and I listen. A guy I like really well is Jonathan Turley. He's an attorney. If you don't watch Fox News, you won't see him. But he's got some good books out. I've listened to a couple of them. And yeah, he's not one-sided or the other. He says, here's what's happening. Do you know that how many felons signed the Declaration of Independence? Every one of them. Because they were going against the crown. And it survived. I'll just say it this way. I've been very fortunate. I've had a lot of good people to kick me in the backside when I wasn't doing the right thing, and I learned a lot. The Air Force was a good example. You go there and you have a this is what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And you learn how to say. These are tough words for a lot of people. Yes, sir, and no, sir. Yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am. Boy, you know what? It'll save you a lot of hassle. It's 2 simple words. Anyhow, I guess there's been a lot of people, football coaches, track coaches. You know what a drill instructor is? He's the guy you hate the worst for 6 weeks. He's the one that tells you to do a push-up, jump in the lake, and do all that stuff. He's your instructor when you're in the basic training. But you do it. And you know, you do what you have to do.
So, looking ahead, if you're elected, what's your number 1 priority for the next session of the legislature?
Whoa, number 1 priority is funded police. I expect you to be able to count on your local police department to be there to protect you. When you call 911, it's like calling the suicide center and say, we'll put you on hold for 30 minutes. No, you want somebody to answer the phone, get somebody out to help you and take care of you. So we need to fund our police and we need to take back control of our streets. Part of your question is, I don't know where the boundaries are between state and local, and we'll find out. We need to protect our girls. We've already talked about that. I don't want you as a female to worry about where you're at in your spaces. They are things we need to do, take care of our girls, take care of our kids, and do the best we can for our neighbors.
Cynthia, anything else?
No, thank you very much.
I have one more. I'll ask you the hard political question here.
Go for it.
And it's not personal, it's political.
Oh, good.
You said several times, and I respect and appreciate your candor here because it's better than the alternative. You said, I need to study up on that issue more, and that came up several times.
Instead of what?
That you need to do further study on an issue.
Oh, yeah.
Your
Yeah.
opponent is somebody who's been in the legislature for a long time in public life and who is, or at least professes to be, very well informed on some particular issues and has that level of experience going into the race. So why should people in your district choose you instead of that person?
I'll just make it simple and it won't be personal. Okay, if you think the police are being funded properly, that's not happening. If you think trans issues are being dealt with directly, and again, I don't care about the trans issue itself, do you think your daughters and your granddaughters can go safely to whatever event they want to be and be in school? Then that's good. It's not happening. The other one, and I'll leave it at that, is, I forgot it. So what I would say, if you think your parental rights end when your child walks out the front door, then you need to look at the bills that have been approved and actually what they do and how they can be implemented. If you say, well, it's not happening here, well, it's there. So if you think all those are correct, then you need to vote where you think that's correct. I just think all those things are not correct and they are not in the right direction.
Okay. Is there anything we haven't asked you that you'd like to answer?
No, I think you've been great. And I love the challenge. I mean, I don't take it as a challenge, but if you don't ask me the questions and be sincere about them, I can't give you what I am. And the best you're going to get is what you saw.
Well, we really appreciate you joining us today. I know it's a sacrifice for candidates in terms of time, family, money, and but democracy cannot run without a vigorous free press and people who are willing to put themselves on the line as candidates. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome. And I want to allude to that. You are the direct link to the public. It's what you say the public listens to. Unfortunately, I think a lot of news media is so biased to one side or the other, doesn't matter. The people have to filter through it too much. You asked about somebody I watched, Walter Cronkite. We used to watch him every night. And you know what he said? Was what we believed. So
Well, we're in the truth business, and we intend to stay that way.
I try to
So
be that way.
thank you so much for joining us today.
And thank you all. I appreciate it.